I approach all of rock music as pop music, all of it. I say we make pop records and disguise them.
That's Howard Benson, the producer that dominated the rock charts and shaped the sound of rock radio for decades to come. His productions have amassed over 100 billion streams and include artists like My Chemical Romance, 3 Days Grace, The All-American Rejects, and Daughtry. Today, we talk about how the business of production, including royalties, has changed over the past 30 years and how he would start out now.
To me, if I was a producer, I would sign my own acts and do them myself. I would own it.
Why DAWs and our obsession with tweaking tiny technical details will never make a hit.
That doesn't sell records. That's not what we're doing here. We're selling feelings. That's what we sell, our feelings and emotion. This stuff is garbage.
His approach to recording the most important part of a record, vocals.
Your point of harmonies is not to make something pretty. It's to make the lead vocal better.
And what the unspoken role of a producer might be.
My job is to make money for the artists. To sell. They want to sell records. I don't care what they say to you.
Any producer or engineer working with bands is definitely not going to want to miss this one, so stick around for my interview with Howard Benson. So I wanted to start out talking about how the career path of producer has changed from when you started to today, right? It was late 90s, early 2000s, very much the CD era, right?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it was more about discovering artists, doing production deals, and then trying to get those people signed because labels were still like the thing. You needed the label.
Yeah. My job was not to do any of that, though. I never did any of that. I was kind of an A&R guy I worked for Giant, I worked for Warner Brothers, but I kind of sucked at it, and I was much better in the studio.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, this is the career path. Just get hired by the artist, hired by the record company. Here's a budget. Go produce the 10 songs, 15 songs, whatever. Hand it in. Next. Like I did 10 albums a year. If you look at the resume, I sort of came from an aerospace engineering background. So my degree is in.
I know. It's interesting.
And so I came up with this sort of philosophy of not having to do it all myself. You know, I farmed a lot of it out. I had an engineer, a Pro Tools guy, guitar tech, a drum tech. So we had, multiple studios going at once with different albums. So I looked at it as, it sounds kind of, messed up to say this, but it was all about quantity for me.
Mm.
I knew I was going to make good records because I'm a good song guy and I learned from Clive and the best A&R guys. So as soon as I had the songs I believed in, it was all about songs and vocals. The rest of it, I left up to the artist and a lot of times my engineers that worked for me and people like that, because I knew there wasn't going to be much difference, whether it was a Stratocaster, a Telecaster, or a Les Paul. It wasn't going to change the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome had a lot to do with the vocals and the songs. So once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I could do this really quickly. And I can just, if I spend more time on the songwriting, getting the songs in pre-pro, the minute I start to produce it, that's not going to be that hard. So that's how I kind of like started. And then you can spend a whole year on one album, but you're sitting at the table. That's the chips you have, that one album.
Yeah.
I want to have a lot of chips. So I was like, I'm going to just do as many as I can. And I figured that I'm not the arbiter of taste anyway. Like the kids are going to tell me what's great. All I know is I'm going to put out quality product, whether it sells or not. Like I always say to my artists, I'm going to put you at the plate and I'm going to give you a swing at it. You're going to swing at that ball. Now, whether it goes over the fence or it's caught by the guy, I don't know. A gust of wind could catch it, goes over the fence, and we're all geniuses,
Yeah.
Or it gets caught and we're all idiots. But you're going to give you a good swing, So I kind of had more of that type of statistical approach to it,
That's interesting.
And that, because I would see other producers just produce 2 albums a year, but my mixer, Chris Thornalgi, would mix like 100 albums a year. He would have hit after hit after hit, but he also had a ton of stiffs. So I would like say, you know what? Nobody knows about the stiffs. Who cares? It's the hits they care about, right?
Right.
So I always joke around when bands would come into my studio. They would say, oh, you have so many hits. And I would show them a board of all the stiffs. And I would say, okay, that looks cool, but these are the ones that didn't sell. This is your reality. Your reality is you're probably not going to sell any records. but we're going to give you a big old swing at it. I never lied to anybody about anything like that. I told them the odds were like 0.5% that their record would go gold. That was just Billboard odds at the time.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. So I made a decision at that time. I would say, okay, let's take this $300,000 recording budget and we can go to Vegas where we have a 50-50 chance, or we have a 0.5% chance of recording this album and making money. Which one would you rather do? They always took the 0.5% chance. So,
Yeah.
I was like, fine, I'm in with you guys, but I'm not going to just depend on that album,
Yeah.
I'm going to do like 10 of these things, so like
Take gambling to the next level there.
totally, and so with Judge and Jury, we kind of do the same thing. We're signing a lot of bands, making a lot of albums. Sometimes the albums we make, we think they're the best things we ever heard and they don't sell a copy. And then we'll get a song that we think sucks and it goes huge. So that's the thing, is you have to accept that you're not the genius in the room.
Yep.
I think I have a pretty good idea like of what a great song is. But again, like with the label, we sometimes we try to add value by bringing features in and doing things like that.
Mhm.
That didn't happen back in the 2000s. We didn't have to do that. We weren't competing with social media. Now we have to use analytics and, bring in other groups of people to help sell more music. And that's something that I don't like doing that, honestly. I really hate calling an artist up and going, will you be a feature on this song? And, I don't know. I think that's just kind of like not where I'm from. But the artists have those relationships, so they can do that. Sometimes an artist will go, well, I'm friendly with this guy and he wants to feature on this song. That's great, but then you have to drill down into how the analytics are presented on Spotify. Like, is it a feature track level? Is it track level? There's all kinds of stuff. Thank God other people deal with that for me. But like, I'm still just about making the music and signing the artist. So yeah, it's a completely different business. I mean, I used to never have to think about any of that stuff. It was just like making the records. That was it.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that it was like a numbers game back then, because I feel like everybody thinks it's a numbers game now, especially if you're an artist. You're like, oh, I'm going to put a song out every 3 weeks.
Oh, it's still a numbers game.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that back then, but I wasn't in it then either. So
let's put it this way: I wanted to have a career in it. I just didn't want to do it as a hobby.
yeah,
So I would look around me and go, okay, who are these? Who are the people doing well right now? It was the mixers that did really well. Why did the mixers do really well? Well, because they had more shots.
yeah,
Every 2 weeks, they'd mix another record. So they could mix 25 records a year. So they had more shots. So they were selling more records, right?
Mhm.
The guys who had the worst odds were the A&R guys, because they would sign one band a year or two, and then they were screwed. If they didn't sell, they were out of a job,
yeah, yeah,
So I thought, okay, why can't I apply this to producers? I just have to work faster, and the speed of the studio is not me. It's the actual, when you get into the studio, it's tuning guitars. It's getting drum sounds. If I can have that all set up ahead of time, okay, you come in, the drums are ready to go. Okay, we don't have to spend 2 days getting drum sounds. Okay, we just took 2 days off the project right then. Okay, I'm going to do vocals in my home studio while you're cutting rhythm guitars. Mike cuts them, listening to tuning, going, that's not in tune, do that bar again. That's not in tune, that's bar again. Oh my God, I'm going to kill my fucking self. Stop. Like, I can't stand it. I'm going to go do vocals where it matters, because that's what matters. When you're in CBS and you hear a song over that little speaker, what are you hearing? You're not hearing the Les Paul. You're hearing the vocals. So to me, I simplified it. It was, again, another engineering part of my brain that works like that. So I was like simplifying it and going, no, it's just vocals, songs, the rest of it, I'll get it right. I know what a good song arrangement is. Now I think a lot of people copy it, but they don't have to anymore because they have DAWs and they can spend all day. You know what I mean? The whole workflow is different because you're not locked into a studio and paying studio time.
totally.
Yeah, it's a different world,
Well, do you think that's better or worse for productivity for artists? The fact that you can obsess for a year easily on your laptop, is it good or bad?
I think it's horrendous. And I'll tell you why. It's not because I think they shouldn't be doing that. I absolutely think everybody should go make as much music as they want. But I would have this argument. I still have this argument. I'll get a demo, I'll get something, and the artist will say, okay, this is the song. I want you to use all the tracks I've given. And I'm like, these tracks sound great. Like, I don't even have to do anything. I'll just give it to mixing. But you know what? You haven't said shit in your lyrics. Your lyrics suck and your melodies go nowhere. But you spent a lot of time on that Howard Benson compressor. You turned every knob on there, like that doesn't sell records. That's not what we're doing here. We're selling feelings. That's what we sell, our feelings and emotion. This stuff is garbage.
Yeah,
I got to do it, obviously, but you got to feel things.
totally.
I was watching the Emmys last night, and that crazy what do you call it thing? Reindeer, baby reindeer one, right?
Okay.
Which I don't know if you've seen that show, but it's the craziest show. Guy's stalked by this woman and all this stuff, and it's really It's a stalker thing. But I could see why it won because it emotionally scares the shit out of you, and you feel something. You feel terror and anger and all that, and it was done on a shoestring, you know. And same with look at Beating Hearts Baby. Beating Hearts Baby, like you like Head Automatica, that was done in 5 seconds. That song.
That's
That guy
amazing.
comes into the studio and says, I have a song. Beating Hearts Baby. And I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna record it. Boom, record, done, songs out of it. And we spent like a year like dealing with the rest of the bullshit that came along with it, which didn't sell any copies. All the stuff there was a lot of issues in that band. But one song comes up, and that's the beauty of our business.
Mhm.
But if you can write your feelings and you can transmit your authenticity to your listener, as Bob Dylan would say, 3 chords and the truth. That's all we're looking for here.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
not really trying to overcomplicate it, but everybody, when you get these DAWs at home and you get those plugins and you get your universal audio and you get all the wave stuff and, plug-in alliance, it's like a big old video game. And people just sit and obsess and obsess and obsess. And you know what? They blame everybody else. Oh my God, I can't make money in the music business. Nobody buys my music. And I sold 100,000 streams and I don't get any money. Well, maybe you suck. Maybe you just shouldn't be doing this as a job. If you want to do it as a hobby, all for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you think you're going to make money doing this, you know who you're competing against? Taylor Swift. That's who you're competing against. You want to say what it is, but that's taking all the air out of the room. Taylor Swift, if you're a pop artist, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
She's taking 99% of the air out of the room. Now, you better be better than her. If you're not, you ain't getting those streams.
Yeah.
I always, by the way, on Facebook, I have to say, I usually don't like this, but what I respond every time somebody says, "Oh my God, Spotify and Apple Music, I can't make any money," and I always respond and go, "You know what? I'll tell you what. You go back to the old days of a CD. Go ahead and print a CD. Go try it. You see how long that's going to take you to do the 4-color separation, to go to the plant, to get the stuff, to all of it, have it mailed, to mail it to your artist. The biggest part of our label, the hardest part, is the physical part. Trying to get the stupid shit made.
Yeah.
Trying to get it out to the right people, getting, and then they send it back. And oh my, good luck trying to do that. Spotify's free for you, artist. It's free. Here's the music. It costs you nothing to do this. Oh my God, I'm such a, I can't, I hate that stuff. Drives me crazy. Write a great song. Sit on the edge of the bed and talk about your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your significant other and tell me how much you're hurting because she left you or didn't leave you or how messed up your life is or how great your life is. Tell me that story. That's the story.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
I always like, when I'm talking to artists, I tell them, like, I feel like you should want people to either absolutely hate hearing your music or absolutely love it. The worst thing that could possibly happen
Absolutely.
is it plays and nobody says anything.
I couldn't agree with you more. I say that exactly. It's funny. You're one of the few people that actually understands that. When I hear something and I hate it, the first thing that goes through my mind is, I got to find out why I hate this so much. And there's probably something there that I'm not. I remember when I heard Korn's first record, I went, oh my God, this is like noise. This is tuned down to B flat. I can't even hear chords. I don't know what this guy, Jonathan Davis, is even saying. I hate this music. And my assistant goes, you're going to be making records like this in about 4 months. I said, I know, but I got to figure out why it's hitting me so sideways,
Yeah.
And I respected Ross Robinson a lot at the time for coming up with that sound. Like that was something different, But if you're an idiot and you don't learn from that, you're not going to learn anything. You got to learn. You got to be open-minded to this stuff. It goes against our egos to accept the fact that somebody's doing something much different and better than us. But you have to be that kind of, what I do is I have a process. I don't listen to records every day or music every day, new music. I listen to it once a month because I left new music Friday once a month, or I listen to music once a month because that way I can hear the changes of the incremental changes. It's not in increments. It's more of a, oh, okay, that happened or that
Yeah,
happened. Sometimes I can't hear it as when it's all the time. I'd like to hear it sort of, and it also doesn't mess up my own vision of what I'm trying to do.
that's true. You start chasing things.
You start chasing things.
I've worked with so many songwriters and producers that they just like are copying things, and you're just like, but if you're copying the thing, you're not going to make the next thing, and that's that's why we're all in the studio right now, is to make the next thing, not the last thing.
That's right. That's why AI. I'm not too worried about AI at all. Not at all.
Well, okay. So I had a question about that because I know
you do. Everybody does.
Right? We have to. If we don't talk about AI, nobody will watch this, right?
Right.
You were an early adopter of Pro Tools, probably first rock producer using it. I think I heard you say that you had Auto-Tune version 1.0. Somebody gave you on a floppy disk.
Yeah.
So obviously you're down with tech. You were an aerospace engineer. What do you think about AI? Do you think it's going to find a place, or do you think we're all just going to push it off and we're going to serve?
No, it finds a place. We're using it. Yeah. Suno AI, great program. Gives you, it's a tool. That's it. It's like, somebody said, what's this like? I said, well, if I don't have an idea for a song, I used to go back and listen to some of my old records or listen to like the radio, and I would go, oh, that's a cool chord change. This is cool. This is cool. Now I have something that does it a lot faster for me. So I can go, hey, write a song that sounds like this, this, and this. And it's basically influenced by all the stuff that has come before it, which is what I'm doing. So what's the difference between that and me having to just sit around and listen to a lot of music for hours? Well, maybe this shortcuts the process a bit.
That's
okay.
True.
I'm not going to use it. I mean, I'll use some of it, maybe I won't use any of it, but it's kind of like a tool in the toolbox. But it's certainly not going to think into the future and know where the artist is at in their lives at that time. And it's the authenticity. It's looking backwards.
Yeah, it is looking backwards.
We're looking forwards. So that's a big difference to me.
That's huge. I've never actually connected that. Yeah, it's trained on the past. There's no way it could like make the future.
That's right.
And I also never thought of it as a tool in that sense, because like when I think of Suno AI, I'm like, oh my God, it's the end of like music sync and so many people are screwed or whatever. But
some of that'll go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a top liner and you don't play music and you can just have beats delivered to you that you can write over and send acapellas to other producers to actually do something with, that's all of a sudden a pretty awesome tool. Actually.
That's exactly right. And you're going to have to be really good at data input at that point. You're going to have to be good at telling it what to do. Your instructions are going to be part of your talent. Is like, how did you get that out of Suno? Hey, what did you tell it? I mean, I am telling you that stuff, like that's the secret sauce, So in a way, it's still the same kind of idea, just done a different way. I'm all for the thing.
Cool.
Why not? I still don't think it's going to look, the AI is not going to tour. The AI is not going to talk to the fans. It's not doing a podcast like we're doing.
Yeah.
It's not doing any of that stuff. So it's still going to take people to do that.
Yeah.
To interact with your fans. Fan interaction is the whole game anyway now. You can write great songs, but you still have to have fan interaction. I actually talked to Warner Brothers about this. I said, are you guys freaked out about this? They're like, no. But they are going to, I think, create some stuff using AI. I'm not sure how they're going to monetize it, but it's certainly not. I don't think it replaces great artists.
No.
It might replace average artists and low-level artists. So, but I'm not competing on that level.
Right.
That's not who cares about that. I want to win the Super Bowl every time out. I just don't know whether the AI will ever win the Super Bowl. That's the difference, So.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that came up and I asked, because both of those perspectives I really think are great. You talked a lot about your team, and I know a lot of producers now, they kind of just, maybe because of budgets or just because the DAWs on their laptop in their living room at all times, do everything themselves. What is the biggest value for you to have Mike and everybody around you working on records? That
perspective.
Oh,
absolutely. A lot of times Mike will call me up and go, I like this song better than that song, or something like that, or tell me, I think the chorus is taking too long in this song. Like who's going to tell you that if you're sitting in your bedroom? You know, nobody.
Yeah.
And you need people to that you trust, and sometimes that you don't like. I remember David Foster when I came up said something to me that I took to heart. He said, "I sometimes just ask the runner what they think in the studio, like the guy who gets the coffee." And I went like, "Boy, you're David Foster, man. Like you don't have to do that." But then I said, "That's really interesting." That's I do that sometimes. I'll just run stuff by people that I don't even know
Yeah.
and just say, "What do you think of this? What do you think of that?" You can kind of tell sometimes, like when people are. I'm not asking them to jump up and down for joy, but if they're like listening or they go, "Yeah, it's pretty cool," like, or that's not what I don't know, I don't really know, like, or something like. There's nothing like auditioning your music for somebody when you're sitting in front of them.
Mm.
There's a whole you can read people really easily like that. Like everybody's used to visual clues and things, and I don't think you get them when you're sitting by yourself.
Yeah.
You don't, and we are trying to get people to react, right? That's the point.
Well, you're talking about authenticity, right? And like finding the emotion and like connecting. I feel like, and it sounds like you maybe battle with this a little bit with the label. You have to play the social media game these days, and you're always looking for artist analytics. How do you, I guess, what do you think about how social media kind of masks what is authentic? Do you think some artists just like fake it too much? Is the question make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
It's always something where I think about, is that thought, because I know what you're talking about, is that thought um, something that matters, or is that something that I think matters because I'm not 20? Like in other words,
Yeah.
is that the perspective of a 20-year-old that is just the perspective now, and
Yeah.
we have to accept it? That's just the way it is. Well, let's put it this way: we can tell by looking at social media. For, like if somebody has 1 million Instagram followers and their Spotify numbers are 20,000 monthly listeners, and they're making music, something's not connected.
Yeah. That's true.
Something.
Yeah.
So we could say, well, we'll sign you because you have all these Instagram followers and you can sing, but there's something about you yourself, that's not able to translate that
Hmm.
into listeners. And it could be because you're such a huge Instagram follower and people just don't care about you any other way. And we've run into that, by the way, early in our life of Judge and Jury. We signed some Instagram people
Yeah.
and we couldn't translate the music. We just couldn't do it. We couldn't, and you know why? Their followers didn't give a shit. They just didn't. It wasn't what they're known for. They're not known for that kind of music. In fact, one of our artists we finally parted ways with because he said, "You know what? The more music you put out, original music of mine, it hurts me actually on my YouTube channel because people just don't want to hear original music. They want to hear me do cover songs. They don't care." And so that's like that was a rude awakening for us a little bit. Like we decided to stay away from that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we still have to be honest A&R people where we sign things that we fall in love with that maybe don't have any following. That's pure A&R.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff you don't see that much anymore. In fact, I would say Universal Records destroyed it because they started doing everything with statistics.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, let's look at the statistics and sign those artists. Well, I guess that kind of works because you're seeing if the following is there. But now with Instagram and TikTok, you go, well, look at all these followers. Oh my God, let's sign this person. They have 100 million followers, but they can't make music. It just doesn't work.
No.
That's the magic of music. Sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, look at Jennifer Lopez. She can't make a great record. She's a million people. Everybody knows who she is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge star. Can't make records.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adam West tried to make a record too. He is
Yeah.
Batman.
Oh,
It's considered the worst record ever made.
the original Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend that collects bad records. Steve Lindsay collects all these really crazy 45s. And he has Adam West, Batman singing a song. They thought they would make money. Of course, nothing ever happened. But it's considered the worst single ever released of all time. So that's fine.
Oh my God.
But you know what I mean? It's like even back then they were trying to do this stuff. And
I guess it's not new. It's just it feels new because social media is just so Overwhelming.
No, the Monkees, they were like that. Look at the Monkees.
Yeah,
The Monkees were a TV show.
that's right.
But you know what they did? They actually had one guy that was pretty talented in there, Nesmith,
Mhm.
who was an actual artist. And they had Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, the great record producers from the Valley here, in San Fernando Valley, who were writing all the songs. And Neil Diamond came up with a song called I'm a Believer. That was their first hit. And it was written by Neil Diamond, of all people. You know, Carole King, all these drill building people wrote their songs. They didn't try to pretend to write songs.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the YouTube artists, they want to write their own songs. Or a lot of Instagram artists, they want to try, oh, I have something to say to the world. No, you don't. You don't.
What do you say to artists that I'm sure you've encountered this in the 170 some albums you've made that don't want co-writers but you know that they need help? How do you bridge that gap?
Well, we just wouldn't sign them.
Okay, well that's one solution.
Well, we can't. It's not good for them. It's not good for us.
Yeah.
You know, it only gives them false hope that something's going to happen, and it only gives us, pain and suffering. It's funny. Ron Fair, who I worked with at Capitol, you probably remember him.
Yeah.
He used to have this funny saying. He said, "I'd rather sign an artist that has an amazing voice that knows they can't write anything and has nothing to say to the world." He used to call them empty vessels. They had nothing up here. And he said, I'll give them the songs. I will give them the songs. And if they know that they have nothing to say, I can make millions of dollars with them because the songs are amazing.
Mhm.
Like, he would find the great songs to them.
Yeah.
But if you find somebody who thinks they can write songs, kind of, but can't do it really and can't get those thoughts across, you're in trouble because it sort of looks like, why is this not working? Like, what's wrong? Like, you're caught in the no man's land,
Yes.
You know who's really good at it is my partner, Neil, and 3 Days Grace. They're open for business. Every time they make an album, they get the best writers in the world to co-write with them because they're great writers already, but it takes them to the next level.
Yeah.
And they have the most number one rock hits in history because they use co-writers. They're smart. And, you have artists that will not do that. I don't see that as much anymore, actually. Frankly, a lot of artists want to be successful. So you say to them, you know what, I got a song from this, song from that. They're pretty willing to do this stuff now. It used to be they dug their heels in more.
Yeah.
But also I think there were better writers too back then, some of them.
Yeah. So many people just, when they think of rock music, I think in general, they just assume that the band writes. But I mean, people forget like some of those big Aerosmith hits. Those were all
Desmond Child.
Yeah. Desmond Child. So
Desmond wrote a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I always think a good collaboration is better than double. A great collaboration is 100 times better than. I
couldn't agree more. Nobody cares, by the way. Nobody cares. You're so worried that your little, view of the world. Oh my God! I co-wrote. All these people are going to think of. No, they're not.
Yeah,
it's not. They're not thinking about you that much.
They just care whether it clicks.
That's it.
I wanted to talk about. Since you were making records in the CD digital era, now streaming, you own a label now. I wanted to talk about kind of the business behind music production. Like, how different are royalties and budgets today versus early 2000s? And should producers be worried about it, I guess?
Absolutely. I think that's why you look at I won't name names, but there's a big band that just got back together that some of the people in that band are producers. Maybe they can't make it as a producer. Do you know what I mean? There are other producers I know that have side gigs that tour in bands. Mm-hmm. Other producers I know that have other things. It's not just producing anymore. It's other things you're doing. You're signing. To me, if I was a producer, I would sign my own acts and do them myself. And I would own it. You're going to make way more money. 3 points on a record now, that kind of don't produce outside my label that much anymore because I'll do records for my, there's 3 bands that are there's 4 bands in my 170 records that are grandfathered into my life because I've done 4 albums with them. And anytime they ask me to do anything, I'll do it because they're, I'm close to them. But most bands I won't. Most bands I'm like, okay, so you want me to put aside 2 months for 3 points on a record that's going to have to recoup on 1 song where it used to recoup on 10 songs. I'm not going to get a check for the next 4 years, and the check will be, buckus.
Mm.
Won't be anything. It used to be 10 times the amount. How do I make a living doing this?
Yeah.
You just can't. Especially the pop guys, it's worse for them because they have to go make these demos and do work with the artists. They don't even know if the record's going to be recorded. So all this stuff is on the fly. Like Max can do it. Max can dictate it.
Yeah.
Luke, they can do that stuff. But most people in pop, and it's different in rock because we have a different mindset about that stuff. But in pop, it's a really tough one. You better write this. Look at the credits. Okay, there used to be 3 songwriters. Now there's 20 songwriters.
Yep.
1 producer. Now there's 4 producers. The money is the same money from Spotify. It's not getting bigger by the amount of producers.
No.
So
chopping it up.
You're just chopping it up. And the artist wants half the publishing half the time because they sang on the song, and you're dealing with a lot of slices of stuff. I'm so glad I got in under the wire. I always say to my wife, we got in under the wire, because the records I made are still selling really well because there were less competition at the time. So people remember those albums more. It's much harder to have a rock record where you go 5 years from now, oh, that, so-and-so record, it doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
You're still looking at records from the 2000s of like when I was making them. Those are still the iconic albums, a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too bad too, because the rock business is alive and well and healthy, actually. Go to Louder Than Life or all these festivals. They're packed with kids.
That's awesome.
But it doesn't stream Taylor Swift numbers. That's the difference.
You things do.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you look at, Linkin Park will make money this year. They've already done 60 million streams on this new record, this new song.
Yeah.
That's good for the business that they got back together. It's good for us. It just brings more people in. So, yeah. I mean, I'm a big rock believer, but I'm also a believer to own your own masters. That's what I think. If you're my producer, I'd say own it all. Fund it yourself.
Yeah.
If you have a studio at home, how much funding do you really need? You can do everything in the computer. You just got to make sure the songs are great and you're good at vocals. You've got to be a good vocal producer. That's the big thing. If you're not good at that, don't bother doing it.
I've seen a lot of producers not even pay attention while I cut vocals in sessions, and you're just like,
yeah,
we're cutting vocals. Are you here? Which is crazy.
Yeah, it's only the most important thing on the track.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love how bands go on tour too, and they have a guitar tech, a drum tech, and a bass tech, and there's no vocal person. The vocalist is left to get colds, the flu,
no vocal coach,
sore throats, and nobody gives a shit.
Yeah,
but make sure that bass is tuned, the strings are changed. What about the singer? Well, if he doesn't sing, you got no show.
Yeah, it's true. I want to ask you about vocals. One of the technical questions I had for you, your vocal chain, C800, 1073, Tube Tech, I think.
Right there.
Pop. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And now that I know your chain and I listen to your records, I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, no, the vocals are pop.
They are.
So you really approach rock vocals like pop.
I approach all of rock music as pop music, all of it. I say we make pop records and disguise them. We disguise them. People don't know what's going on. They go, that rocks, man, but inside is a pop song.
Yeah.
Imprisoned in a big rock production, So that's how I look at it. I've always looked at records like that. I love pop music. I was brought up in Philly. We just had pop music for the first bunch of years of my life, and then MMR and YSP were the rock stations.
Yeah.
But it was still pop music, really, So I just love pop. I love melody. My biggest problem as a producer is I have to take the melody out. I actually have to make it a little less poppy so it doesn't come across being too pop, So sometimes when I have a really poppy chorus, I'll put screams behind it to make it sound super aggressive. And, listener will be like, man, that's just so metal. Yeah, but you can sing it, right? You know what I mean? Like that's my job, kind of. Like my job is to make money for the artists to sell. They want to sell records. I don't care what they say to you. They want to sell music.
Totally.
Absolutely.
What's your process like in when it comes to vocals? Do you do sections and comp? Do you like to let them perform? Does it vary?
It's just me, the singer, and my engineer. That's it.
Okay.
And they're in a separate room with no window. I don't want them seeing me, and I don't want to see them.
That's kind of nice.
A lot of times, I'll have the singer sing it through once just to get the feel of the arc of the song.
Mm.
And I really like having a demo vocal there because a lot of times the demo vocal is kind of the initial uh, vomiting out of the song, like from the artist.
Yeah.
And there's something there sometimes. And I'll just go listen to it and go, well, it's obviously not recorded well and there's problems everywhere, but here's what's going on. This is the truth of the matter. So then I'll just some singers can sing an entire verse all the way through. And some singers have to do it line by line, especially fast rap music, fast rap vocals have to be done line by line. There's just not enough breath in there.
Yeah.
I really let the artist decide. I'm very much about the artists making their minds up in the studio. I'll say to them, do you want to do the chorus first or the verse first? They'll go, well, let me do the chorus first because my voice will wear out too quickly on these higher notes. Well, after they're done all that, I write out all the harmonies. And the harmony is a big part of the records I make because, I love harmonies and I love secondary vocals. I love secondary hooks. I like at the end of songs to have other parts come in.
Mm-hmm.
I like giving gifts to the listener. I call them gifts. You want to just keep giving them things. So we have 180 seconds. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. 180 seconds. If you get that 180 seconds right, we're golden. But we really only have about 30 seconds because the first 30 seconds, if we can't get that right, the rest of it sucks. So, I try to keep it very simple. My harmonies are very based on Bach 3-part invention stuff right out of the Hindemith book and, music theory, just straightforward. No parallel fourths, no parallel fifths, unless I decide we're going to do them. Mm-hmm. No crossing harmonies. A lot of octaves because we used to never do octaves, but that's kind of the sound that you notice more as things. So falsettos and verses, I dress them up. And then if I don't use it in the mix, I don't use it.
Yeah.
But at least I have it. I don't generate any harmonies. Basically, if I missed one, I will. But essentially, I just use like Antari's, harmony engine.
Yeah.
To generate guide vocals. So I'll go in there and make giving away some tricks here, but I'll make a track of thirds. Mm-hmm. I'll make a track of fourths, and then I'll do a comp track where I put the fourths and thirds together above the lead vocal because usually 90% of the time you're dealing with thirds and fourths moving around depending on what note you're at, if you're major, minor key.
Yeah.
So then I'll comp it together and I'll put it through the headphones of the singer. And I'll say, okay, this is the arrangement, sing this, and that'll be the easy way for them to do that, and then we'll obviously tune that later, that stuff. Or I'll play it on the piano. I'll just plunk it out. Like it's half and half depending on how much time we have.
Yeah. That is a great tip because I think a lot of producers shy away from harmonies because they don't know how to find them. And so that's gold right there.
I would say that when I get a song from a band and it says demo vocal harmony demo, the harmonies are always bad. Always. They have no idea what they're doing. None. And it's so fucking horrible. And you know what happens is like the lead vocal will do this and then they'll sing a low part and they'll sing an octave. Yeah, the octave sound it's a one note, right? Mm. And there's parts where it's just bouncing into minor seconds and shit like that. And you're just going, well, this sounds like shit,
Yeah.
If you're trying to do something, at least understand what you're doing. If you're going to break the rules, break the rules, Your point of harmonies is not to make something pretty. It's to make the lead vocal better. It's the lead vocal that still matters. It's not the harmonies that matter. So the harmonies have to add to the lead vocal. So when you have a lead vocal and a harmony and the harmony crosses the lead vocal, your ear gets pulled to the harmony. So you don't want to ever cross, but you see people crossing them like this, and you wonder, well, I don't know why people can't sing this song. Well, because they don't know what the melody is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the harmony became the melody here for 2 bars or something like that. So, I think there's a lot of experience that you get in the studio that, especially in Nashville, I did a Rascal Flatts record, and that's a real harmony. But that's like, you got to be friggin' great to do that record because those guys, they know their shit, and their harmonies were amazing, to come up with watching them do stuff and all that.
That's awesome. Yeah. My thing has been doing vocal sessions for most of my time in LA, and your description right there, and for anybody that like struggles, just go back and listen to that a couple times because you lay out exactly how great vocal sessions go down when it comes to harmonies. So those, yeah, I'm with you. I know you got to go in a second. I've got 2 questions that I close the show with, so I'll hit you with those.
Sure.
And let you get back to your day. The first question is, was there a time in your career that you chose to redefine what success meant to you?
Yeah. I think I would say it was 1997. I had made a lot of records, but they were hairband records. Like I did Bang Tango and Pretty Boy Floyd. These were like the tail end of the hairband era. So I was first starting. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not selling any records right now. And maybe I'll get a real estate license. I was in trouble, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm avoiding the issue here. I need to have hits. I need to be the hit maker. That's the only thing that's going to make me survive this. So I had a guy come into my life, Keith Olson, who was a great producer from the past. I was let go of a record, which never happened to me, but this band fired me from a record. It was 1994, 95. And it was a wake up experience for me. Like I was like, oh my God, like what's going on? And I said to the guy, Keith, and he had platinum records everywhere. And I said, I'll just audit the project. Let me just watch what you're doing, because I'm really I'm really lost right now a little bit as a producer. And I watched him produce, and all he cared about were hits. He wasn't distracted by guitar tones, by any of this stuff. And I thought, this guy's got it simplified, man. Like he's the hit maker. I want to be that guy. I don't want to be the cool guy in the room. I don't want to be the critical guy in the room. I don't need people to love my albums because they sound great. I want chart position. So I had to reinvent my thought process because I realized that if I don't have chart position, I'm not going to be hired. I may have a good career, like people will still use me and all that, but I want to be the top guy.
Yeah.
So I started going after this. I started paying more attention to songs and vocals. And then I got POD to do. And that was like my big breakout record because it all came together on that record. I figured out the computer. I had a great engineer and I was focused only on songs. And then I said, after I had my first hit, I was like, I want to dominate this business for 10 years. I'm not going to say no to anything. I'm going to say yes to everything. And I'm going to knock all these guys out. Like I was brutal. Like I remember, like I turned into a different person after I had a hit. I remember Kobe. Kobe is from my hometown in Philadelphia. I went to Lower Merion High School, and so did he. And I remember how vicious he was as a player and how he kept shooting the ball. I was like, I'm going to keep shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. I don't care if I miss a few, but my mantra is going to be, I want the last shot. Give me the ball. Give me the ball. I'll do the hits. Like, don't shy away from that stuff. And I remember being on a panel with a couple of producers, and I knew I was on the right path because they were all talking about, the record company sucks. We have to be close to the artist. It's all about the art. And I was the fourth producer to talk in this panel. And I said, I love these guys, but all I care about is having hits. Because if I have a hit, I guarantee you that band will hire me next time. I don't care how much they hate my guts, or I don't care. I will be sitting in that chair. And it worked like that.
Yeah.
It worked. Because every time I had a hit, I was there the next time. And the publishers, I remember it was a publisher, they all came up to me and they went, thank God some producer had the guts to say that. And I was like, you know what, I'm on the right track here. It got down to my team and they all wanted the same thing. We wanted to be at the top of the charts. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger. It was weird because I didn't have any hits up until POD. And I was so unused to it. Like all of a sudden the phone calls, instead of making them, I'm taking these phone calls.
Yeah.
It was a mind, I struggled for so many years. I really did. I paid my dues, man. I was 14 years of no hits, and then finally I got it. So I always tell people, stick to it, man. You just got to keep at it. You got to have a brutal attitude towards it.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from making hits.
Yeah.
Don't, you can leave the other stuff to other producers. You want to have a cool record? Here's this guy's number.
Here's a cool record.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a common thread between where we started and where we're ending, where you're just talking about the numbers game and just wanting to have hits, where it's like you're very tapped into something that I think a lot of people just forget about, which is the fact that the only thing you can control is the work that you put in. You're never going to control whether a song's going to be a hit. You can just do the best you can,
You're absolutely right.
and it's just doing as many records as you can with the intention of making them as great as you can is kind of the only thing you can do. So
That's it. You cannot control the public's
you never know.
response,
Yeah.
but you can use all you've learned.
Billie Eilish could put a bomb out. She could make a bad song. It's possible.
Oh my God. I mean, I did this artist when I did My Chemical Romance. I remember thinking, huh, five guys from Newark who have like, they look like they just got off like a bus and their guitars don't play well. They're screaming everything. But you know what? This singer looks like, I think there's something about this guy. If we can get the right lyric for this guy, just the right lyric, right? The A&R guy was so great. I had such a great A&R guy, Craig Aronson, who passed away, but he signed My Chemical Romance. He signed Avenged Sevenfold. He calls me up one day and he goes, listen, at the end of this cassette is this lyric. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I said, dude, that guy singing that lyric is a winner. I know it in my heart. I feel it. That guy singing I'm not okay, it's money. Now we have to make a song around it,
Yeah.
because I could feel that he would resonate him, Gerard. He had that look about him. He had this, you could tell he wanted to be that misanthrope, the outcast,
Yeah.
and him singing, I'm not okay. I'm really not okay. And then you go in the studio and you use everything you've learned and you go, okay, I've gone to the bridge. How am I going to make this interesting? Well, the band or my engineer, I don't remember, says, let's put a guitar solo in there that's harmonized and we'll do something like that. And all of a sudden people think they're Queen, but I can't control that. That's not something we were thinking at all, right?
Yeah.
We just had nothing else to put there, right? So we put that in and we get to the breakdown and he's singing, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And something goes to my head. We got to be a little bit funny here because it's a funny song. I'm not okay. Like he's the whole lyric is about, being like a loser. Right. And I went, what if he sings I'm okay in the breakdown? And he goes, and he does, I'm okay. But he sings it like he's not okay. That's the joke, right? So he
Right.
goes, I'm okay. I'm really okay, and he's not okay, right? So those are the things that all your experience that you start getting the feeling that you're starting to hit everything on the nose right at the moment. And it's such a great feeling. It
Yeah.
is. I hope every producer that watches this gets to experience things like that because sometimes not every time.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just know. Like I knew with that project, that kid was a star. I just took one look at him and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad nobody else knows this but me. Like, and I saw the video to Helena. Oh my God. Like I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like he was not that guy. He really he more metamorphosized in 3 months into this rock star.
That's awesome.
You don't get those all the time in your life, those things. They maybe 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah.
Daughtry was the same way. I didn't see that coming, at all. I didn't want to produce them.
That's funny.
I passed on them so many times. My wife was the one who made me produce them. My wife's like, he's so hot on American Idol. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do an American Idol project. I just did My Chemical Romance. You're going to kill me,
Those records were close together. That is a pretty hard juxtaposition.
They were pretty close together. Yeah, like 2 years. I was still running off that other album. And I was like, you know what? Like you said earlier, all I have to do is do my job and make sure the songs are great. The rest of it, I can't control, and give the artist all the credit. The artist has to go out and sell this stuff. I don't, thank God. It's like summer camp making records for me, weeks in, weeks out, goodbye. You're out.
Yeah.
Probably never see you again until you come back the next year,
Amazing.
So
last question for you real quick before you go, is what is your current biggest goal? And what's the next smallest step you're going to take towards that goal?
I just want to build the catalog of the business up. That's what I'm thinking about with Judge and Jury. And we want to build it with good music. And this is the mantra of our label. Even when all the analytics, we talk about all the marketing and all the sales and all this stuff, I keep reminding our staff, it's all about the music. We have to get the music right. If the music isn't right, the rest of this shit, nothing matters. So I I hope that that gets through to these guys. And once, I back off the label at some point in my life, that they keep a music label going, not just a analytical label going. It's really easy to have the bean counters run the company, as you know, at Capitol.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember making records at Capitol where there was like bean counter. They didn't even want to make new records because they realized they could make more money by not making new records because they had such a catalog.
Yeah.
And their bonuses were tied to that. Might be before you got there, but I remember they were late 90s, early 2000s. They weren't even signing anything. They're like, hey, we have a Beatles catalog and a Beach Boys catalog and all these catalogs, but every time we sign something, we spend all this money and lose it. What's the point? Let's not sign anything, So that's when the bean counters screw it up.
Yeah.
Like you can't have that. We still have to make art. That's what if you put it all together and you find a great artist and you make a great record, it's magic. Mm-hmm. You talk about it the rest of your life.
If you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear from another producer whose sonic identity has shaped indie and alternative music, then be sure to check out my interview with Tony Hoffer.